Welcome to Real to Real Outdoors. Captain Adam here. We got a great episode for you today. Awesome captains. Can't wait for you to meet them. Big thanks to Captain Chucks and to Ludington Beverage for their great sponsorship and making this all happen. Hit that subscribe button. Help us out. We need some more subscribers. Share all of our posts and like this video. Leave a comment if you like. We'd love to hear from you. So let's meet those captains.
Hi, my name is Joel Devries, boat fin scout from St. Joseph, Michigan.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Barber. The boat name is Innuendo out of Grand Haven, Michigan.
Hi, I'm Chris Peplinski with Pure Chaos Pro Fishing, and I am out of Onekama, Michigan.
All right, today we're going to talk about deep water trout fishing. We had a YouTube person, I think, or maybe a Facebook, asked this question to talk about deep water trout. So that's where we're going. But before we get to deep water trout, we got to give a shout out to Cutwater Cocktails in a Can. This stuff is really good. Like, if you haven't tried it, you should try it. Very tasty.
Fantastic.
All right. So deep water trout. Who wants to go first on deep water trout?
I will.
Oh, Chris actually volunteers.
Well.
All right. Here we go.
Well, when I fish deep water trout, which I learned from the guy over here, but it's not much different really than fishing shallow water trout. What I really noticed was direction of troll. And angle makes a huge difference when you get in that 250, 300, fishing 20, what are they, 24-pound balls that we were running? 24s. You got to go straight. That's the biggest part. You can't deviate very much because otherwise you're going to have a pretty serious schmozzle, we'll say.
I had one today.
Did you?
Yeah, it was good.
Crispy, I think the guy sitting next to you is the reigning Big Boys champion who won at fishing deep water trout.
On deep water trout. We should get tips.
We should actually hear from Adam about
You want me to
And you
talk
were
about it?
offshore today.
I was.
You went out?
We did catch we caught 2 trout out there off the bottom. We lost another one. The shallowest of those was 275 down. Yeah. And but the direction of troll being being lined up with the current, either going with the current or going into the current, is absolutely important. And if you want to run more than one rig down there, it's critical.
Very critical.
And you'll hit a fish at that depth. If you're not, lined up with the current, it'll come up. It could come out up outside your 3 color. You have no idea where it's going to be.
Yep.
So it's really important that your boat is very square and both sides are pulling very, very similar. Now, if we're running 2 rigs down there, which we often do at both of our out and downs, we bring them up when we turn. We don't leave them down there.
You almost have to.
Yeah, you can't do it. So we'll bring them up to about 150 feet, and we'll make a turn, and then we'll bring them back down. And 2 things. I mean, you won't get a tangle, but the other thing is if you hit a fish in a turn, it's awful. I mean, it's the worst possible scenario because you will wipe out an entire side of your boat. So we call it don't get too greedy. If you're fishing deeper than 200 feet, don't try to put too much down there.
Yep.
The more you put down there, the more tangles you're going to get. And it doesn't matter how good you are, you're going to get tangles. But a lot of times, if maybe it's rough and you can't get perfectly square because of the direction of the waves, if we have the out and down goes, we pull the shoot rigger immediately. We don't even, the shoot rigger's up, say at 100 feet down. We just get it out of the way because we don't want to let that happen. We don't want to let that tangle happen. And then the second thing when you're doing that is always watch your low wires because there's a good chance that fish is going to come up outside your low wire. And then you have, wire line with mono line up against it. And it's just a really bad scenario for landing percentage. Or tackle retention, maybe is another way to put it.
Well, you come to Captain Chuck's and buy more when that happens.
You do. They actually sell everything you need to reset up your everything here. We had a pretty good tangle today. The exact same scenario. We just left a rig. We only had 1 rig on the bottom, and we left it down there, and we turned, and the shoot rigger got into it. and the bait was actually on the rigger cable. The shoot rigger bait was on the rigger cable of the out and down. So magical things can happen when you're running stuff that deep.
Yes.
Especially around the point.
Yeah, and the point's even worse.
Some
Yeah.
weird
Down
stuff.
your balls together.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had that happen.
Yeah.
That's not fun either.
No.
Hey,
And don't put your probe down there.
Yes. Don't put your probe down. Yeah.
So what about what are some of your experiences there, Chris, since you're trying to throw me
actually, he threw you.
give it all up?
No, actually, what I found out is when you go deep, sometimes less is more. It really is. It's like the more you put down, sometimes it shuts down your bite a little bit. So I do better if I'm more than 160, 180, only running 1 or 2 rigs down there.
Yep.
And you know, you can be just as effective with them because you're getting faster bites on them. But really, yeah, I think less is more sometimes.
Yeah, I think if you find that you're not perfectly square and the current's not really pushing against you to the side, either side, you can put more out.
Yeah.
You know, we put our divers out 800 feet, 600 feet, but it's not a pleasant experience. I mean, we have electric reels, so it's not
we all
that
do.
bad.
Yeah.
But
Thank you, Adam.
without,
I think we all have them now, thanks to you.
did you guys get some?
Oh yeah.
They're back ordered.
have 'em.
We ordered more.
Yeah.
But the electric reel really kind of changes that whole thing too.
Yeah, we
It
all
does,
electrics
yeah.
now.
Like 3
There you
years.
go.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
So that's something to look into, anyways. The Daiwa Tanacons, is that everybody's running?
750s.
I have
Pelican 750s.
Oh yeah,
Beastmasters?
I do.
Huh?
How are they?
They're great.
Are they?
Yeah, I like them a lot.
I just actually rigged up one. I'll show you to an M12 battery, and it works perfect.
Wow.
No problems so far.
It's nice checking those divers on those though.
It is. It makes you change things more.
Well, it makes
How
it
many-
deep.
how
It
many
makes it
times you go,
deep.
man, is it weeded up?
Yeah, you don't want to pull it in.
650 out.
I
It's
don't-
probably fine.
I set my divers. I deep water trout fish a lot, and I found with the electrics a couple years ago, like offshore of St. Joe, that we don't actually need to trip the divers. We just tighten them
bring 'em
down and we bring them in, let them slip the drag a little bit. So when we got a fish, when you're back, and we're sometimes back 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. I got 3,000 foot of cable or wire on mine, and you don't have to trip them. You can just bring them in.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Actually, yeah.
Then your
It comes
fish is
straight to the boat. It's just like bringing them up on the rigger. They swim with the diver to the boat. As long as you let them slip the drag a little bit, if you got a big one on, they can kind of shake their head. But it's just slow, steady tension. And I think we catch more fish as opposed to tripping them, letting them come up 1,000 feet behind the boat. They're back there flopping on the surface.
Yeah.
You know,
That makes perfect sense.
I just bring them in nice and slow, and they come right to the boat.
So do you set that release on the diver a little bit tighter?
I do. Yep.
Gonna try that tomorrow.
I just run the mag deeper divers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 124s, is there?
Yeah, the big, whatever the
Yep.
biggest one is. I
Yep.
think it's
With the big
124.
weights or whatever.
Are you adding weight
Big
to them
weights.
there, Jeremy, or not?
That's a secret.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually do. We actually built lead rings for ours. And
Oh, yeah.
We actually make them heavier. But I mean, we can get our divers down 400 feet. We can take bottom and 400 feet with them if we want to.
Well,
Wow.
It's not that much fun to do it, but we
Yeah.
can. So
Yeah.
yeah.
possible, yeah.
But I think with deep water trout fishing, there's really two aspects. The biggest thing, and I think we've all said it, is keep it simple. Like the tendency is you're out there deep water trout fishing, you want to put a couple coppers out. You might be able to get away with one aside, maybe on a big board or maybe on a ninja board if it's way out away from the boat. But if you try to put out a big spread, you're hosed. I mean, every time we try to do it, it's a problem. Every single time.
Yep.
The other thing is I think there's two types of deep water trout fishing. There's the deep bottom fishing that you're talking about. There's also a lot of suspended trout offshore.
Yep.
So a lot of times our out and downs, we may target the bottom trout with just our shoot rigger. When I had a shoot, I don't have a shoot anymore, but when I had a shoot, right? When I had a shoot rigger, that one was always dedicated to the bottom, and we would fish the suspended trout with our out and downs. And a lot of times with our electrics, we'll target those suspended trout as well. And I changed it up a little bit. I'm not usually running rotators. I'm usually running metal if I'm fishing them suspended like that.
So you got right there.
Yeah, so just old trash cans, simple stuff. I mean, have to slow down a little bit with them so they're not spinning on you, but I think that you can catch a lot of suspended trout. If you're marking them, you can catch them.
Yeah. I agree.
Right.
That's kind of where we started, and the whole thing was fishing offshore and seeing these marks and what are those marks and curiosity got us going on it. And a lot of times there's kings down there too, and you can put you can put a lot of different rotators down there that maybe both species would be likely to hit. It's skirted spinning glows as well. A lot of times the king will still hit that pretty well. But the trout, the deeper trout stuff, and I consider deep trout probably 150 and deeper. But from 150 to probably 230, you can run 6 rods down there and be effective and without a lot of tangles. But when you start getting out into that deeper water, you have to commit to it, and you have to really less is more. It's very true. But being boat control and being very straight is very important. Another thing that we do, if we hit a trout deep and we feel that the trout is coming up behind the boat straight, we slow down right away. And that helps to keep that fish from coming up. The speed is going to make that fish rise faster. So by slowing down, you're keeping that fish under the water column. And you want to keep it under the surface as long as you possibly can. The closer you can get it to the boat without it coming up to the surface, your percentage that you're going to land that fish is tremendously higher.
And if they do come up, I'm in and out of neutral a lot. I spend a lot of time in neutral if they're on the surface, and keep the rod tip in the water. I bury the rod as deep as I can get it. So you're not high sticking them, because if you do, you'll lose them.
If they're up on the surface and they can shake their head on the surface, there's no water for them to push against. They can shake that hook very easily. And pressure too, Don't put too much pressure on a fish, especially at the beginning of the fight. Put enough on it, but you're tearing a hole in its face all the way in. And the more pressure you put, the bigger the hole gets. And then especially like you said, if you're high, you got your rod up in the air, high sticking them, the angle as you get closer to the boat, the angle changes, and it makes that a lot more likely to pop off. Kind of true with guys that are really good at fighting kings. They know how to keep the angle on that fish, tight, and keep it consistently on the same angle to where it's not going back and forth, and the head of the fish is rotating that hook back and forth the whole time. So those are all good things. Joel didn't give up anything yet.
He's pretty quiet over there.
Yeah.
Well, this is very, very good information, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
I really appreciate this very much. So, no, but I think when you talk about the deep water trout, 200 plus, fishing, you definitely have the unique opportunity to target catch. So years ago, fishing off South Haven in 400 foot of water, you'd be able to go out there, and you actually would have your gear down suspended, because you wouldn't typically fish the bottom, but you'd have the ability to mark a fish and target a fish by dropping your downrigger, dropping your diver into the zone where that fish was at. And you're likely to get a strike at that point. So I think deep water trout affords you the ability to actually chase the fish, where it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense when you're fishing inside of 100 foot and you're trying to chase a mark there. Where, I think you have much more effect with gear dropping it into the zone where you're targeting the fish where your mark is at. So it's kind of a cool aspect of deep water trout fishing. I know on our boat, we definitely believe less is more when we deep water fish, and even to the point that at times we'll fish one rod in that zone. Typically the water's clearer. The fish has the ability to search out its bait at a much greater distance, and we like to fish less in the deep water, maybe one deep rod, and then we run some suspended rods, because usually when you're deep water trout fishing, you have fish that are suspended and also on the bottom. So you have two different areas or zones where you can fish and put your gear into and be effective, and not necessarily screw up either zone as far as putting too much in a space where the fish may turn off. So we kind of like those couple aspects of doing that.
And I think that technology has come tremendous bounds from what it used to be, especially with sonar. And even with the inexpensive sonar, you're going to mark those fish down there, and you're going to start to see the same fish in the suspended fish are very often in the same part of the water column over and over and over. You know, it's if you think it's a trout down there, drop something down there. You know, if you're in 300 feet of water, you're marking fish consistently at 150. Put a trout rig at 150. And oftentimes you're probably going to get bit.
You can get that,
It's almost to the point where you'll mark a fish, you'll catch
Sometimes they are
fish.
kings, yeah.
Anybody else got anything you want
Do
to
you
add?
guys change do you have certain baits that you like to run deep water fishing? I mean, what are your kind of go-to rigs?
So we're a heavy spin doctor boat. We like the plastic spin doctors. We talked about it a million times. It's so forgiving. So it forgives you against your speed. It forgives you against the current. It forgives you against a lot of things, but still presents the bait in a way that the fish is attracted to bite it. So we'll typically start with the spin doctor world when we're fishing trout.
Like eights or tens?
Eights, we like eights better than tens, but we do fish some tens.
Yeah.
But you know, if we're fishing that spin doctor bait and we're marking fish and we're not getting bit, then we're not afraid to try some metal, maybe adjust our speed, and put some metal baits down and with skirts versus non-skirted.
Yeah.
I mean, there's guys at the table right here for skirts like us. You know, Crispy is a non-skirt kind of guy, where he likes fishing without the skirts behind the spinning gloves.
Yeah,
So
I
I mean,
know.
we have our things that we enjoy or that we believe in. I guess confidence is a big part of this too, right?
That's probably the biggest part is confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it depends too. If you're digging with skirts, they get all clammed up and
They
the
get
green slime
Yeah.
and you know, and then they just I don't think they spin right, and then you get more problems. Usually I try to put a bead in front of them. You know, if I'm digging with them, so that it keeps the sand and green slime out of the holes. But
Yep.
if I'm digging, I'm usually not running skirts. So
What I really noticed is now being in Michigan City the last couple of years and fishing down south, it's a lot different trout fishery down there than it is here.
Yes.
You do fish a lot more suspended fish. For us, I mean, we dig. I mean, we
Yeah.
really do. We're on the bottom.
It's all
9
sand,
times
though.
out of 10.
Yeah.
Right. We're down there. I mean, I remember Joel called me in Michigan City. He's like, we were in 450.
Yeah, we're 450 foot.
And he's like, put it down. I go, okay. And I put one down. There's one. Put the other one down. There's one. I think caught our trout in 35 minutes.
Yeah.
you guys have incredible trout fishing down there.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
really do. I mean,
it's
awesome.
And I tried it up here. It's like, oh, what the heck's going on?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like this, but it's just different. Different water clarity is the big
Yeah,
thing.
water clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll open it up for any questions anybody has out there.
So, question for you: as you're trolling these shelves out here in this deeper water, finding out where those big drop-offs are, is that a north and south troll, east-west troll in the troughs? Typically, how do you guys fish the shelf?
All right. Well, that's a great question. It here in Ludington, the shelves run a little bit northeast and a little bit southwest. So you're usually about 30 degrees. If you're south of Big Point Sable, once you get north of Big Point Sable, you can be a 60-degree troll to stay along the shelf. If you're gonna bounce bottom for trout, it's really critical that you stay in the same depth of water. If you try to go down the bank in Ludington, we call it go down the bank, but we're actually going north, up the bank, I guess. I don't know. I didn't make it up.
Turn right.
This is just what we say. But if you tried to do it at 90 feet and you fished here all the time, you'd have a heck of a time because it's so hard to stay in 90 feet. But 115 is pretty easy. 80, pretty easy. The drop off really goes from about 80 to 140 in a hurry, but there's some flat spots. We normally look at our charts and we try to find kind of flatter areas and we'll try to target those fish there. Oftentimes up on top, as long as the water's not too warm up there at the bottom. I don't like to fish trout if the water's warmer than 48 degrees on the bottom. They'll be there for a little while. They probably won't be there tomorrow. If you see 51 degree water with trout, they won't be there the next day. They'll just move out wherever that, colder water is. But yeah, it's hard. It's really hard to fish on any kind of a steep drop off to fish trout effectively. But it can be done. I don't know that you could put out 6 rods and do it effectively, but you could probably run a couple. But there again, it's boat control. The nice thing is in Ludington, normally the current either runs up the shelf or down the shelf. It doesn't hardly ever runs like into it. It almost always follows the edges of it. So usually the current's at least on your side with alignment, you know. But if the current is hitting you on a weird angle and you're traveling right up the shelf, it's almost impossible to do it at that point. So it kind of, if it lets you do it, you know, a couple rods will get you a long ways. But that being said, too, the old timers, they would take Dodgers and they would slap them into so they'd purposely turn into the bank and let the Dodgers slap the bank, and then they'd pull off. And that'll trigger a lot of bites, and it'll trigger a lot of king bites too. But unfortunately, now with the quagga mussel, if you slap the bank like that, you're probably dirty. So you got to have that spin and glow on there to keep it clean. Or the whirligig. The whirligig is very effective at keeping that spinning portion up off the bottom just a little bit. So it's a good bait if you haven't tried them out. Anybody else?
I think the shelf in Manistee is a little bit more friendly.
Yeah.
I do too. Yeah, the hook especially.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. You know, pretty much right in front of Manistee. I mean, it's a good place to learn to trout fish on structure because it doesn't drop it quite as fast. It's not as steep.
Yeah, and the project in Ludington.
Same thing.
Unfortunately, this time of year, normally it's too warm in there. In the spring, May, June, early June, the trout will be up in that flat, and there's like flat drops there, and that's a really good place to target them and to kind of learn how to do it.
Well, a lot of times what I like to do too is, I mean, I don't fish every day anymore. I like to get on my Navionics app.
Oh yeah.
And look Navionics up, and then I can also pull up on Coast Watch. You can see a current map, so you can kind of get somewhat, whether it's right all the time or not, but at least gives you a good starting point of, all right, well, the current's crashed in the bank here. I probably can't trout fish here, so I might want to run around the point and start in like the 3s, 4s, and then I can trout fish that way. You know.
Yeah.
But technology so far now, you can really do a lot of homework even in the morning for 20 minutes, and you can figure out a lot of stuff pretty quick.
Yeah.
I think it helps to decide which way you're going to troll when you're trout fishing. I use that depth average current map every time I trout fish, and that's, you know, I'm not wanting to fish with the current if I can help it. I try to fish into it, and so I'll pull it up every morning. And that, do I start north and troll south? Do I start south and troll north based on what I see there? And it's usually pretty accurate, I think.
It's pretty close, yeah.
So,
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's a great question. I hope we kind of gave you a summary anyways. A lot of good information there. There's some things I'm going to try tomorrow from Jeremy's reeling them in with the divers not tripped. I'm going to try that out. That sounds like a good plan. But once again, thanks for tuning in. Big thanks to Cutwater Spirits for sponsoring this episode, and Captain Chucks, as always, for being a great host and allowing us to do this. So I hope that you get out there and catch some more fish and keep the questions coming.